The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello, welcome to Propaganda, the show where we find out what's been said about Leeds United. Dan, Michael and Rob with you on the show today. Brought to you with Levi Solicitors. They will do you a 10% discount on your legal fees. levisolicitors.co.uk/the Square Ball. You may observe we are all wearing merch as well, some of it new. Look at that.
Mine's kind of hard to make out.
It's like a blackout t-shirt, isn't it?
Yeah, the sort of black on black large square ball. It's nice.
It's very nice. If you want to check any of that stuff out, have a look. I think we've got to say when you're on YouTube, you go, the link's in the description, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that bollocks.
We've probably forgotten to put the link in the description.
No, I've got a template that puts it in it every time now. Yeah.
Oh, well,
that's
good, very impressive.
Yeah, so you can find this on YouTube if you are listening, and if you are watching on YouTube, you can listen as well. You can get the audio version as a podcast. Let's get into it then. Two parts to this show. Propaganda first, what's been said by Leeds fans about the Chelsea game, and then we'll deal with what Chelsea fans have been saying about Leeds in the second half of this. First things first then, from our TSB Plus subscribers, the feedback form that we send out. What have we got? What was picked out? What did we get right, wrong, or otherwise on the match ball?
Well, something we didn't know about at the time we recorded the match ball, but I've seen covered comprehensively online since, and Nathan has pointed it out, the utter chaos and incompetency by the Chelsea stewards and the police. It did look and sound like absolute chaos. There's been a few videos going around. I think essentially there were 5 turnstiles, and it took everyone about 30 seconds to get through them, because when you were scanning your ticket, it didn't do anything.
There were reports that some of them weren't working as well, like 1 or 2 of the turnstiles weren't letting people through, so
yeah.
Not good, is it?
And it backs up pretty quickly when it takes 30 seconds for a person to get through a turnstile.
You know, when there's a crowd of people who are sort of stuck in front of like a solid physical object, you know what I find always helps is batoning the ones at the back to make them move forwards, because that's never led to any problems in a football setting, hasn't it? Has it, pushing people through gates and so on?
Well, I don't know if you saw the Met have said it was now to do with them.
Well, we know the Met are a great bunch of lads.
So that's let that be the end of it. I think Adam Pope saw reporting that yesterday. They basically said, "Oh, it's Chelsea."
Well, they're the police.
Chelsea to do with that. Well, but you were there, weren't you? Well,
just ask someone else. It's not. Yeah,
I suppose we were there a bit.
And now they've said that, we should just put that one to bed, shouldn't we? Because we're trustworthy.
But yeah, it's. I mean, it's a tough one because we often criticise new grounds for being soulless. And I guess this doesn't happen at a new ground because everything works properly, and you've probably got a 15 turnstiles rather than 5.
Did Ken Bates sort the layout of this?
I believe so.
Stadium,
probably.
Are we going to peg this one on him?
Yes, he's not had a villain nomination, has he? For ages?
Well, he can't, can he? He's not eligible for.
Oh, of course, named after him.
Named after him. Yeah, that was the original rule. If you're a long time listener, he can't actually take the award. Although he was nominated as anyway, we'll get round to all that in the weekly show. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Chelsea, awful. Right, we need to deal with probably a lot of feedback on the Click situation, where a number of people have criticised him for, well, one of the people says made us weaker from the second that he came on. Set up a goal with a really good bit of play, but also did give away that last-minute penalty. But I've watched it back, and I just want to peg the whole thing on Rudiger. Is that all right?
I think that's fair. On the night I saw Sid Lowe, who writes for The Guardian, and he's not a Leeds fan or a Chelsea fan, and he was questioning that penalty, and that made me think, well, it's not just me being Leeds biased if other people are questioning it as well. And I don't really know what he's meant to do there. Like, the ball comes towards him, he sticks a foot out to try win the ball like he would do at any other part of the pitch, and Rudiger, because he's soft, just falls over and the referee gives a penalty, and because of the way VAR works, it's not going to get overturned. So he's sort of in a no-win situation there, I don't think.
They know how to game the system, don't they?
Danny Murphy was saying the same on TalkSport, actually. I saw.
Hang on a second, are we saying something good went out on TalkSport?
Yes, when they say things that support Leeds, we're more than happy to talk about how good they are.
Excellent.
But yeah, he was saying, you can't really give those as free kicks. And I think I said during the match ball that sort of a tackle happens like a dozen times in a game, and if it's not in a penalty area, you just don't go down because you're trying to actually win the ball and do something constructive with it. And the way I always think of it as well, which is something that used to crop up with Grealish, because the way he goes down, he doesn't seem to play for Man City anymore, so it's not such an issue. But when he was at Villa, and they always used to...
You said this on Tuesday morning, by the way, and we're playing Man City tonight.
Yeah, Grealish hat-trick and all that, or penalty probably is more likely. But I always used to think, imagine everyone on the pitch did exactly what Grealish does. you don't really have a game to watch anymore, do you? You just have a series of passes and people falling over with every single minute of the game.
It is getting that way, though, isn't it, at times?
And if that Rudiger one, if people go down under that contact, it becomes a completely unwatchable sport because no one ever stays on their feet, because unless you take it to the point where you say, okay, it's now no longer allowed any physical contact. It was one of those where I completely can see why it was given, because they always are. And it wasn't even the softest penalty given this weekend, was it? At the end of the day.
No.
But even so, fuck off. Get up, Rudiger. I hope he leaves. That's all I can say, because he's been linked with Real Madrid, isn't he? Now,
he's not going to get a new club, though, is he? Because when they do the medical and they check his inner ear problem that affects his balance, they're just going to say, sorry, you can't sign for us. He's not going to pass the medical, is he? The big shit house. But yeah, that was really, really annoying. So I'm Are we absolving Mateusz Klich of any responsibility there whatsoever? I mean, he shouldn't. If you put your leg up like that and kick the bloke, you're giving him a decision to make. And while we all know, and I know it turns us into swivel-eyed lunatics, that doesn't get given at the other end, does it? There's no way on this earth that gets given at Stamford Bridge in the 93rd minute or whatever it was.
It doesn't get given in the first place, and then VAR look at it and they don't overturn it. I think is what probably happens. They'll have a little pause and they'll just do the check, and then they'll be like, no, it's no clear and obvious error. Just
on that, right, so VAR, Mike Dean, people think that, again, going back to the swivel-eyed lunacy, that everybody thinks that the ref's against them, and we in particular, we look at it. But you can't look at what happened this weekend with all those penalties that were given. Liverpool, Man City, with Man City with the armpit, and they couldn't find a definitive angle to overrule it, so they didn't bother.
Apart from the one that everyone saw.
Yeah, apart from that one. And then, Salah doing Salah bits to get that penalty for Liverpool.
And the Leicester one was terrible as well.
James Maddison, yeah. Oh, was it James Maddison who went over?
Was it Maddison or Tielemans? I can't remember. Tielemans scored the pen, I think. Yeah. Can't remember who it was now. But yeah, he basically runs past, I think it's Lascelles, and he's
it's a classic Grealish, actually.
He could run past him quite clearly, but instead he kind of dangles his right leg out to make sure that he gets some contact, and he's
already going down by the time the contact comes.
He's kind of jumped at him and dangled a right leg at the same time, and for some reason
the Grealish.
It is the classic. Kane does it quite a lot as well.
Yeah, and you can't think that when you see all that there is not, whether it's conscious or unconscious, a leaning towards the so-called Big Six teams, or Spurs aren't any, are they? But you know what I mean. There's an inherent, it seems like an inherent desire to protect those teams, or whatever it is, or the narrative of those clubs being at the top of the Premier League. I don't quite know what it is, but that sense that there's just an injustice and it always favours those clubs.
Especially when VAR seems to be designed to just agree with the refs whenever there's a contentious decision, when the refs are making contentious decisions sort of blind, thinking, well, we've got VAR to back us up, but then VAR's just going, well, yeah, you said it, so I don't want to overturn you, and it's just a bit of a mess. It's the same in rugby league, where a trial, they'll go up to the video ref, but they sort of side with the referee's decision. So if he says, I think that was a try, and there's no evidence to suggest otherwise, they just go with the try. And likewise, if he says, I don't think that's a try, they'll just stick with his call and say, all right, then no try. And you think, well, but he's going to you in the first place because he's unsure, so it just doesn't help.
Yeah, we're in a weird situation now where things are both penalties and a third party, as in the VAR person, can look at it, and under certain circumstances they'll say that is a penalty, and under others they'll say it isn't a penalty. But it's not based on any kind of actual objective truth. It's based upon what someone has already said. Even if they're looking at it and saying, well, I would have given it, but I wouldn't have given it enough to say he should have not given it. It exists in
the fact that you can't
both a penalty and a not penalty.
The fact that you can't describe it in two sentences, it absolutely encapsulates the problem, doesn't it? The fact that it's so complex and subjective, and yet so it's effectively a subjective test in the eyes of the referee in the first place. It's then passed on to VAR, which is supposed to add more objectivity, but is influenced by the subjectivity of the first decision. It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see it on a Monday morning when newspapers have a column from an ex-referee and they all disagree with the decisions over the weekend. You think, well, what's the point in this? If they are just subjective decisions, there's no consensus to be had. So I don't really see the point of it. You're going back to the point of VAR, and it's not something I particularly like. I can see the point of it for what's meant to be objective decisions like offsides, or whether it's crossed the line and things like that. But a penalty and fouls and things like that, even the interpretation of handball, it's all seems to be subjective now. So adding another opinion just confuses things more.
It was easier to accept when it had just been passed through one person's bad decision, whereas now you have to quite often look at a penalty through the eyes of two people, and you think, well, they've both got it wrong then, and that's it becomes unforgivable when two people have looked at something and gone, yes, we're going to stick with this bad decision.
It does actually reinforce the idea of bias, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Funnily enough,
it gives you a second layer where you can apply more bias if you wish.
Yeah.
Which seems ridiculous.
There wasn't a moment when that went to Mike, what's his face, and you thought, well, he's going to say no to that. You knew, didn't you, straight away?
Has there been a single decision this year as well where the ref has been called over to look at the screen and then gone and then stuck with the original decision?
No, it's theatrical. It's all theatrics, isn't it? So as soon as they refer it to the screen, I mean, I don't know, but I've not seen any evidence.
I don't think anyone's gone to the screen yet and gone, Mike Dean, shut up, you dick.
Yeah.
It's never a pen.
Yeah.
What are you wasting my time getting me over to this screen for?
I was right.
Oh, bloody hell.
But anyway, back to Click. I think it's fine that people criticised him. The reason it's gone badly is because people tweeted directly at him and sent him abuse and stuff. Like, I'm sure he knows he's fucked up there. He will have. Whether objectively he did or he didn't, he's still going to feel like he did. Exactly. I don't think people need telling directly, and that goes for all the players.
A number of people actually, just going back to the feedback, mentioned the penalties and the refereeing. Roger, Winnie, Chris, Dan Ogden, Toby Lerone's back. Stephen Warnock even, I don't think he contacted us directly about this, but has weighed in on the matter. And I will zero in on Winnie's point, who says, like Dan says every week, the Premier League is such a horrible place to be. The level of officiating, how the smug, arrogant big teams always get the rub of the green and just spend billions to right any wrong. It's awful. Simply awful. Makes one grateful for Bielsa. It does. It does, actually.
Yeah, the Steve Warnock thing, that was on the programme Sky do, where they break down decisions. Dermot Gallagher thought it was a penalty. Stephen Warnock thought it wasn't. Well, he was saying, his exact words were, if that's at the other end, Leeds do not get it. 100% they do not get it.
Yeah.
And
a 6'4" player should not go down like that, and you will get contact when a ball comes into the penalty box. Simple as that. Yeah, fair enough.
That's the thing about what I'm saying. If everyone went down to that level of contact, imagine the scenes. You'd have like a dozen players all hitting the deck at the same time because there's been a bit of something, like on a corner when people are all grabbing at each other. Imagine everyone falls over at the same point of feeling contact. Looks ridiculous.
Can we zero in on what Ray Wallace picked out now, by the way? The important issue of the weekend.
Which one's that?
The yellow socks.
The yellow socks.
The yellow socks, of course.
Where did they come from? I think the short answer to that is Adidas.
Yeah, club shop, maybe.
Yeah. Do you think they bought them before they went?
That was the...
rung up their rep at Adidas, said, "Hey lads, we've got a sock clash, what should we do?" You got the blue ones. Yeah, can't you do any better than that?
That was Jason Pearce at Hillsborough, wasn't it, when they still had the club shop tags on it. I saw a clip on Twitter, actually. It was the game at Chelsea where Haaland and Kelly were both sent off, and we had blue socks that day. So we do like a bit of a mash-up kit against Chelsea, but it's unlucky now, that kit combination, I'm going to say.
All right, because we're going to wear something akin to that, aren't we, at Everton? We might even have yellow shorts there.
Won't we go?
Would you go white, blue, blue, or is it going to be too similar? In a passing glance to what Everton are wearing. I think we might go
bring out a new yellow kit.
White, yellow. What we should do is bring out a yellow kit and then keep it forever, and not luminous highlighter yellow,
not fluorescent yellow, just
normal Leeds United yellow. I'd go and buy it as a matter of principle because Angus Kinnear said they don't sell, so I'd buy 3. I'd spend all my money on yellow kits. Prove him wrong. What else have we got then?
Charlie Cresswell gets a bit of praise, which is good. Tom Cole picking him out for storming into the melee at full time.
Again, Rudiger culpable in that.
Well, and Rudiger shied away from Cresswell because Cresswell got in his face and he just saw him and he thought,
look at his neck.
He's a big lad, isn't he?
Got a big neck as Cresswell, hasn't he?
Where's Dan James? I'm going to go pick on him instead. Who's a little boy I can have a go at instead.
I like his cameos as like a destroyer now, Charlie Cresswell. We sort of bring him on at the back to deal with Lukaku, who conceded, just send him up front like he has done a few times this year. I like that.
He won his header against Lukaku as well, didn't he? As soon as he came on, he got above him for it, so that was good.
Hey, good point by Grumpy Git Kev. I hadn't even noticed this. I hadn't even thought about it in the wake of this game. He says, I was worried at the start looking at our lineup, but I think this was the first game apart from against Watford, they don't count, that we actually kept a good performance up for 2 halves. Hopefully this is us playing at a more consistent level for a full match. Fair point.
Still lost, but yes, I do agree. We did play well in both halves.
But we lost to the refs, to VAR, to the Premier League machine, the military-industrial complex.
Yep, that's true.
Everything.
Bill Gates.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, he had a hand.
Oh,
in
you've
it,
been for your
sure.
booster this morning, haven't you?
I have, yep.
But be careful not to get marked down by the algorithm. Yeah, this is a joke, by the way.
Yes, Bill Gates is not inside me, as far as I'm aware. But yes,
not today anyway.
We're recording the match ball later on, when the side effects will really be kicking in. So I might be dripping with sweat on the match ball and shaking. But oh well, nice to have it done.
I had mine on Sunday as well. I think we've both been inspired to get boosted because Moscow's been down with it. He'll be back actually in a day or two, won't he?
Well, speaking of the Moscow, actually, Phil and Moscow's West Stand friend Ralph, which is a very long title. We might just have to start calling you Ralph soon enough. But he was just saying that Roberts was very good again, and maybe if we keep Moscow off the podcast, he'll keep playing well. It is true that I think Moscow thinks he's helping Tyler, but all he's doing is heaping pressure on him. Now no one expects anything. There's no one in the Leeds United universe exclaiming him as the saviour anymore, so it's just an easier job for him.
Superb ball for Joffrey's equaliser. It was a lovely. I guess the whipping boys in there in the form of Click and Roberts made that goal.
With Firpo and Harrison as well were in there.
That interchange of passes, and we did mention it on the match ball, but it was brilliant, wasn't it? And that little bit of interplay there, you're thinking we're supposed to be a team that's gurgling around the plug hole and flirting with relegation. That's brilliant football, is that?
That was a moment of sort of textbook Click as well. That's what we sort of used to him seeing, where he shrugged off two players and kept the ball moving and kept moving himself, and then he timed the pass beautifully for Roberts, and that was a great cross as well. I think Roberts, he seems to have really responded to Bielsa yet again, kind of just publicly challenging him a little bit, and he seems to have taken it quite literally, because Bielsa said, as long as he's willing to fight for Leeds United, then he's got a place for me, and he's quite literally fighting at times now. He does seem to have added a bit of aggression to his game, and I think it's really helped. Not trying to do anything fancy, but just being, we were crying out for Bamford to be the same, weren't we, for a while, and it took him till he was 25, 26, whatever, to sort of develop that side of his game. So I think it is helping Roberts just being a bit more aggressive, which we don't really talk about as for attacking players, I guess. You sort of think of it as a defender.
I was going to say, I think Roberts now he does seem to definitely be a midfielder. I guess he needs to do that more, doesn't he? Because it's not such a part of your game when you're playing up front, but if you do need to get stuck in a lot more. Some of his tackles do look a bit red cardy. I will say, the way he launches himself. There was one in this game where he chucks himself into someone in the corner, and I was a bit like, ooh.
Well, that was one way, I think he was attempting to block the ball, wasn't he? But when you saw him launch himself, you thought, no. On Rafinha, TJ does wonder why Rafinha's struggled to be involved in the majority of matches in the last few weeks, with most of our play going down the left. And he does, or she does, mention that teams are doubling up on him, but it's slightly worrying given our general lack of creativity. I think that's true.
I think he's still involved.
Yeah.
It's weird, because there was the game the other week against Palace or Brentford where we came in and thought he was quite quiet, and then you see I think it was on Amazon Prime, they did a compilation of his best moments from the game, and you think, Christ, he was actually brilliant. He did all these things amazingly well.
His bar's so
We're
high,
just so
isn't it?
used to it,
You don't notice
the
brilliant, sort of run-of-the-mill stuff, if you like.
I know it was a penalty, but he still scored in this game. It was in the Brentford one, it was his corner, wasn't it, that led to I know it was flicked on by Ayling, but
it was his cross for the first goal as well.
Yes, it was. So, when you see him play well, it's like, a couple of assists, goal against Palace. It's all right.
It has been touched on in one of the recent shows that we did about how we might be suddenly effective from set pieces because we've got somebody able to deliver it like he can. And again, you don't notice a bloke whipping a corner in over and over again, but it's certainly a lot more dangerous. Like those whipped in free kicks as well. Obviously, we saw the goal against Leicester because Schmeichel's a terrible keeper and a bad human, I think. Is that fair?
Character.
But just
like his dad,
just that low ball whipped in where it bounces like somewhere in the 6-yard area is a terrible thing to defend, isn't it? All it needs is a touch.
Yeah, I think he's doing fine. He just shouldn't tackle ever again, not in the box anyway. Because the more people can criticise Click for his, but Rafinha's one was really stupid because when you chuck yourself like that in the box, it's always very dangerous. So don't do that again. And it's Rudiger, and he's not like he's about to score, is it? He's kind of right out on the edge of the box, and it's just no need for it.
I dare say both Click and Rafinha will learn from the experience of conceding penalties in this game. Like, just stay on your feet. And there must be such a temptation when the ball is there to be won, but then Rudiger's just stood there waiting for you to come and clatter him, isn't he?
You do wonder if maybe those sorts of tackles are the downside of murder ball as well. When you don't, I don't think there are free kicks in it either. It's just you're just flying into each other and going hell for leather for as long as you can manage it. So
when Liam Cooper ends up by the byline and Rafinha's just not having it, just steaming through him.
we mentioned Firpo earlier as well. A few people, Matty, Pete, Julie, Nathan, all saying as well that it was his best performance yet, and deserves a mention because he's come on so far from the Brighton game when I think we were all.
Well, I was going to say, if you'd have mentioned to me at that Brighton game at half time and said, Firpo playing Chelsea in about another month or whatever, good luck with that one, I would have gone, oh Christ, that's going to be trouble, isn't it? But actually, you can see how far he's come.
It's not even been a month, has it? It's only been a few weeks, I think.
Feels like Rob. It feels like a fucking life.
Been a lot.
A lifetime following this fucking football team.
He just looks like he's watched us play now and sort of fits in the team.
It's almost like it takes time to learn a system and figure out how your teammates play.
I'm still defensively a bit worried about him when he's run at directly because he doesn't seem particularly good at stopping that still. But
it's fine.
I suppose a fullback for us, it's not really a defensive position, is it?
No, I mean,
as long as someone helps him out.
And they only scored one goal from open play.
That's true.
How many did we score from open play?
One.
Right, yeah. So it's a one.
I was thinking, is this a trick question? No, we scored one.
1-1 draw then, isn't it?
1-1 draw.
Yeah,
correct.
And he played his part in that.
And Gelhardt, I mean, he does get a brief mention here, but as you would imagine, he gets plenty of hero nominations. So we'll maybe deal with him then.
There is that. It's an interesting. Well, we'll talk. Yeah, I guess we'll do it in heroes and villains. Yeah, that question about how much you use him, because the question that follows from when he scores is, well, surely you're going to use him more now, and you do wonder whether just keeping him just in that sweet spot where you're giving him little cameos where he can come on and influence a game where people are starting to get tired, games getting stretched and all that. Whether that is, it's going to be play to his strengths of being able to nip in between the lines and move quickly, whereas he might not get the luxury of that much space early doors. Although that said, it sort of fitted and worked seamlessly at Spurs.
Yeah, I remember when, this is going back a long while, but when we first had Max Gradle, we were using him off the bench and everyone was like, he's really good, why don't we just start him? And then eventually we're like, yeah, let's start him. And then he was good. Then he was good for a full game instead. And it was a little bit frustrating, I guess, in the same way as this is with Gelhardt, particularly with Bamford out. He just has more of an instinct about him, doesn't he, I think, to get in and score goals. He probably has more of an instinct than Bamford, truthfully, I think, from what I've seen of him. He's a lot more direct. He doesn't do the same hold-up job and the same running and stuff as Bamford, but in a different way, he's actually probably more effective as a striker.
I mean, Bielsa's already warned us that he tends to prefer experience over youth when times are difficult. And I don't know if this is kind of a template for how we're going to approach playing against those teams at the top of the table, in that we did sit off and we were kind of pragmatic, and then in the last half an hour, I guess it was half an hour because they went 2-1 in front, he changed things. But he did hold on with Gelhardt. Like he was going to come on earlier, didn't he? And he just delayed it. And it's hard to argue because he came on and scored within a minute. I don't know. I think it is the way he's using him now. Probably is the most sensible way to do it.
I have this discussion with my dad about Creswell, and he'll say, "Well, why are you not playing him?" So, well, he relies on seniority in the squad, as you just said, Rob. He does rely on it. And when we spoke to Hayden Evans the other week on the Phil Hay show, they understand it is a case of phasing players in over time and not loading too much onto the shoulders. So he may well be ready, but you've got to kind of keep him primed and ready. You can't just drop him in for 30 games or 25 games, because you will have ups and downs during those times, won't you? It's maybe better just to ease you into it and bring you up to speed. I don't know, just in fits and starts, not too much at once.
And I think there's always a worry that if you just play kids constantly at such a young age, they sort of break. I mean, Sam Byram did it one year, didn't he? He played nearly every game, and then he was never really the same because he got a hip injury. So, yeah, a bit of patience. I know it's frustrating because he does look brilliant, and it would be nice to see a bit more of him, but, patience might not be a bad thing.
And final point then in this section relates to game management, because Gary is questioning the game management in this one. And he's saying you've got to know when a hoof up the field is more prudent than a keeper chip to a player that's going to get closed down, and making rash challenges in and around the box. Great football phrase, that, isn't it? In and around. Stand them up, make them have to do something and not dive in. Yeah, that's what I was saying about the learn, weren't they, about those individual tackles under those circumstances, and where the threshold is for Premier League referees to give everything to the big teams, doing air quotes. But in terms of the clearances, I do agree with that. There are times when I don't ever sit there and think, just get rid. But you can sometimes see us playing ourselves into trouble, can't you? Because they'll do that little, either the chip out will work, then they pass it back to the full back, and they'll start playing little triangles in the corner. and it does end up getting hoofed, and we concede possession anyway. You do wonder sometimes whether we've just played ourselves into trouble and whether a slightly more pragmatic approach might work at times. But it's always easy to say that with hindsight,
I was going to
isn't
say, and we score quite a lot of goals from playing out from the back, don't we? And keep possession, and it actually does. If you can do it properly, you alleviate pressure because you're not just giving the ball straight back to them. And we're not a team that, although Chelsea did have more possession in this game, we're not a team that sets up to have 40% possession. Like, there are plenty of Premier League teams that are comfortable with that, and we're not one of them. Like, we do try and dominate a game.
I was going to say, the occasions when they did hoof it forward at the weekend, we were then moaning, going, fucking hell, what are we doing it to Jamie Shackleton or Dan James for? Because they're just not going to win it in the air. And, you know, that goal that we gave away, the first one, was frustrating, and you could sort of see it coming. But, you know, this is what Bielsa does, isn't it? It's plan A, but do it better. Plan A failed, but it doesn't mean we should change from that. Because Dallas does take that touch a lot of times brilliantly, and it's such a hard thing to do. And like, the way we ask our fullbacks to deal with those things is really difficult. But if you get it wrong, just do it better, I guess.
Melier's positioning as well. No one actually mentioned it on the feedback, but it was a bit off for that goal. We kind of didn't mention it, and I think he's got more than enough credit in the bank to not be completely criticised for it. But it did look, without being a goalkeeping expert, you know, focus on the strikers. Yeah, it looked to me like there was a big gap there. And if I was coaching Mason Mount, I'd have said to kick it in the big old space.
It's a bit like the goal at Spurs, that was it Højbjerg's squad, where you just kind of go, why is there not a keeper in the net? But like you say, he's got the credit in the bank. It'll happen. It's
certainly as you say, it's a dangerous way that we play. So risk is built into it, isn't it? And just to reinforce what you were saying there about that and playing out from the back, that's how you get through teams, isn't it? Draw them onto you, play through them and round them, and then you've got space to play when you get sort of into midfield. So
it's one of the, when it goes wrong, you can always look at it because it's a very obvious isolated mistake, and you can say it's a bit like when zonal marking goes wrong and people go, oh, you need to go man for man, which ignores the fact that man for man goes wrong all the time as well. It's just, and when the ball goes in on the post, you'll always get someone to go, should have a man on the post. It's like, well, that's with hindsight of saying, well, I can see where it's gone now. I can see where it's gone wrong. I can say you shouldn't have done that. But I mean,
although game management, it was picked up on, I think, in the post match, wasn't it? Bielsa did address it and saying sometimes we just need to be a little bit cleverer. But I'm sure, you know, given that we've got Man City tonight, it'll all be fine.
We did see the first Ayling flop since his return.
Yes.
Speaking of game management, that was good.
We did. We need more cheats. If this game teaches us anything, it's we need more cheats.
Except Rudiger.
Yes, he did it. He does it with a sneer. Luke Ayling does it with a cheeky chappy grin.
That's part one of Propaganda done. Then have a look at part two. It's here on YouTube, where we will deal with what the Chelsea fans made of this. Stick about.
The Square Ball Podcast.